So welcome to the podcast. So I'm Bradley Taylor. I'm here with Adam and Max today. And today we're going to be going over a few different things. We're going to be going over a new bill that passed to try and regulate AI. So here in California, where Adam and I are at, it's SB 1047. It was recently passed by the legislative branch of the state government. I believe it's still on the governor's desk to be signed, but its goal is to regulate AI models, focusing on safety, having shutdown mechanisms, which, okay, and testing for catastrophic risks. So we'll dig into that a little bit more and see what that really means. And then we're also going to talk about the arrest of Pavel Durov. So Pavel, I know I'm probably butchering the name, is the CEO of Telegram, and there's definitely a lot of controversy over his arrest and what this means for privacy, and especially for applications that have cryptography in it, and when you're doing business in other countries like France, and what that means. Adam will have a new segment. I was right, I guess.
Absolutely.
Where we're going to talk a little bit about there's a New York Post article that marketing firm confirmed in a deck that yes, your microphone is spying on you. So we'll dig into that report and see what that is. And then we're also going to play around with Vercel VO. So this is a application by Vercel that enables very quick and easy creation of UIs from just a simple prompt, and not just a UI like, here's something that I can play as a toy, but actual components that you can then install into your own component library and start using today. So with that, let's jump in. So first thing we want to talk about is SB 1047. So I'll give you a little brief overview of what the law says, and we'll kind of talk about it on the other side. So, all right. So the California bill, SB 1047, so the bill includes implementing mechanisms for swift and complete model shutdown, which I'll be interested to see what they plan on with that, safeguarding models against unsafe post-training modifications. This is going to be key, especially for business that we do, because what we do is post-training, right? Whether it be fine-tuning, whether that be how it's being used in RAG systems, stuff like that. And then establishing testing procedures to assess the potential risks of models or their derivatives causing critical harm. So what is critical harm? So I thought it'd be interesting to use this. So the bill was 44 pages long. And instead of reading all of that, I decided, why don't we create a little chat bot to talk about it? So let me pull up Answer AI here. So one of the things that it said was that it is aimed at implementing mechanisms for swift and complete model shutdown. I'm very curious, not from the media. So what, where, how does the law say it will implement mechanisms for swift and complete model shutdown? So this is one of the things that I've been doing recently, which is just going and grabbing the actual laws, the bills. There's a lot of politics going on in the US right now. And instead of having all the spin of the media, I just want to know what's actually in the bill. So basically here, it stipulates that developers must implement the capability to promptly enact a full shutdown of a covered model. Specifically, it states it must implement the capability to promptly enact a full shutdown. When enacting a full shutdown, the developer shall take into account as appropriate the risk that a shutdown of the covered model or particular covered model derivatives could cause disruptions to critical infrastructure. Assuming, basically taking into account that, hey, if I turn this off, is it going to disrupt things that run off this model? It's part of a broader set of obligations. How would this work with open source models? Like, if you release a model out into the world and it's there's no central authority to shut down the model.
Yep, exactly. These are the same questions I was asking it. Okay, what's the plan for this? And then it's like, there'll be somebody monitoring it, which would be kind of our next questions, which just leads to more and more questions about this. Like, I don't know how we would be able to enforce this. It's like, shut down all Android phones.
See, this is ridiculous. This is where I hate where government gets in and starts regulating stuff that too quickly. Before January 1st, 2027, a covered model, so this is so the definitions means an artificial intelligence model trained using a quantity of computing power greater than 10 to the 26 integer of a floating point operations. I can guarantee you that not a single one of those legislators know what the hell that means. First off, and or the cost of which exceeds $100 million when calculating the average market prices. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous because you're saying, okay, you can only have this much data in here. So what? Okay, so if it's 10 to the 25.999, is it not a covered model? If it costs 999, $1,000 or 999 million as opposed to 100 million, is that going to be a covered model? Is this going to now put when we're training these? So I don't understand how regulating these based off of the size or the cost makes any sense, especially since the price of compute and how much it takes to train these models is going down. I think I saw like a stat that said GPT-4 lowered how much it took to for computation by like a factor of 100 times.
Yeah, and like, do they have to? Who's testing this? Like, who is this? Like, are they waiting for somebody to tell them, give them this information, or like once it, like you said, they go past it, but then they're like, oh, like we've like made a slight improvement to it, and it now drops below these thresholds. You just turn it back on. Like, it's too many. It's too abstract, in my opinion, of a thing to like be able to like turn off.
Yeah, who's picking these metrics too? Like you were saying, now the cost becomes super small. Like, what's the value anymore? Like, what are we going to be looking at? Like, how many tokens it allows? What's the dimension it can do? With the way that this is advancing, like we can get to the next model that's micro model and still as powerful or even more powerful than what we have today.
Well, that's the thing is what we had today. I think when they actually, when they actually first turned on GPT-4, they found out that it could, create entire, new biological and chemical weapons. That was GPT-4 trained on far less computation than that. I mean, you're just a few steps away from at a GPT-4. They had a research project where they showed that GPT-4 could be used to manipulate people. I don't know if you guys saw that, where so basically this was like about a year ago where they GPT-4 was charged with like trying to get a caption. Or a CAPTCHA, like they were tasked with something to do something. It hit a CAPTCHA that it couldn't solve. So it literally called someone, a TaskRabbit, hired its own TaskRabbit, said, "Can you do this?" And the guy actually said, "What are you, an AI bot?" And it lied to him and said, "No, I'm blind." So
I remember that one now. That was crazy.
Yeah.
There's some big prompting that was happening behind the scenes, to instruct it to work like that. Like we've seen people instruct like in the prompt say like, act as if you're blind. I'm going to be your eyes and hands in the real world. Act on the world as me. So you can give it those types of features in a way, and let the AI go run wild in the real world.
Well, sure. I mean, it already is. Like, it's just like it's out there for different like support bots. Like we do it in our prompting to like give it a certain role. Like this is who you are. This is how you act. Like, you should like stick to this, and if you don't know, just like say you don't know or you can't find that information, but don't BS your way through it. Hopefully, so manipulation is all about like who's susceptible to it, and like do they believe somebody's lying? Like if it was a real person, like would you actually like not, and they were saying that, like you would just believe them, because you can't see them or see how they're acting or anything like that. One of the other things that was interesting about this was like, I'd asked it about the monitoring systems, with the automatic shutdown, and I'm like, well, who's the one that's actually going to be monitoring this? So, they have what did it say here? The responsibility for monitoring AI systems falls on a designated regulatory body, potentially including the Board of Frontier Models created by the legislation. This board would oversee compliance, ensuring that AI companies adhere to safety protocols like model shutdown mechanisms, risk assessments, and safeguards against unsafe modifications, plus the Attorney General. So I'm curious, like, what kind of like testing protocols they're going to have around this. Who can be part of this, board of frontier models, these auditors, because it sounds like a pretty good way to get somebody potentially like paid off or, donations to their campaigns.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly. This is what the problem. I mean, here's another agency, another budget thing. Who's in charge of it? Is this democratic at all? Is that elected? Because this board of frontier models is going to have a ton of authority. Because these frontier models will eventually be running everything from critical infrastructure to, how we even get our news. And that sort of centralized authority scares me, because who's saying that? Is there going to be one? Okay, what is there going to be a board of frontier models in California and one in Alabama? What happens if they don't agree? Are we going to have different models for every single jurisdiction out there? Yeah. That's going to be a big challenge that I see. One other thing too that I'm seeing on this is, okay, we're great, $100 million, or what was it, 10 to 20, I don't know, some large number, right? Well, okay, fast forward 10 years from now, I mean, those would be the type of models that you can train on your laptop. How are you going to, so if you're saying it's dangerous at that time, are you either going to say, oh, it's no longer dangerous? Or now are you going to have a chip on our laptops that is reporting on you, on what you're training? Like, who's to say that? So like, I am very opposed to this bill. Like I am.
No, that's a super interesting point, because the moment you start looking into people's creating their own models, because everybody can create a model today, you can download it and train it on your computer. And if they want to get serious with this, you're right. They have to start controlling people's computers. They will have to work with chipset manufacturers to inject something right into the bin so it kind of controls you, because software won't be enough, I think. Do you know if they say anything about like open source developers, how they're going to be monitoring them when they start developing? Do they talk like any type of submissions, or how do you get your model under their supervision?
That's a good question. I'm asking it right now. So if I go in here and so I'm asking, what if a lone person trains a model? Like, right? Like, I mean, we say, oh, who's going to train that? I mean, I could definitely see Elon being like, screw it. Here's $100 million model out for free. Come at me, bro. Yeah. Right? Like, what happens if they don't do it? Like, I mean, I could see Zuck doing the same thing with Llama. I mean, he's already, we'll talk about it in our next thing with like, Telegram and all the things that are happening there. All right. So developer must submit a compliance statement to the Attorney General no more than 30 days after using a covered model for purposes other than training, evaluation, or compliance with the law, making it for commercial use. Okay. So it's only for commercial use for the first time.
Public use.
Commercial or public use. Oh, okay. Public. So anyone that can use it publicly. So if I create my own,
I create my model, and when I publish, hey, here's my model for creating apps. Now I'm subject to this law. I have to go and check it out.
Or the inverse, I train my own take over the world model, and as long as I don't share it with anyone, I'm cool. I get to use it.
Yeah. So I mean, based on this, like you were saying, if you had a model, if you're running it locally, like you sent this out, and people were using it, it's like you can't necessarily stop people from doing that unless you have some sort of, unless it's like forced to be online and like check it, somehow. Like, I just think it's too early, like you're saying.
It's way too early. I mean, like even this, right? So starting January 1st, 2026, developers must annually retain a third-party auditor to perform independent audits of their compliance. The audit must be retained and made accessible by the Attorney General upon request. So we have to retain a third-party auditor. First off, you're looking to get into a business. Every new law means a business.
I was about to say,
there you go.
We should start an auditing business.
So, but we're also talking about centralized training. We have on our own roadmap decentralized training. I've seen papers of decentralized training, right? Where they offboard, whether it be post-training or pre-training, these different CPUs. So if you spread this out over, let's say, 100 million computers, does this fall under that? What happens then? You can't turn it off. You can't shut it down. It'll be a trained model. I just think that it's just, it's way too early.
What was the value?
This is on device.
Yeah.
What was that?
They showed like 100 million, 10 million can reach up to 10. Like, how are they valuing it? Like, how do they come up with that number?
Out of their ass. I mean, I'm sure we could probably go through the transcripts of that, but I don't. Yeah.
Does any of the existing models fall under this already? Is that how they came up with the number? Maybe like they took Llama or they took OpenAI latest model.
Moodless.
My spelling.
And of course, there's like
so
a lot
horrible.
of ways around this, right? Like if you look at something like Apple Intelligence, the way they're coming up with it, it's like a micro model composable architecture, right? Like I don't have a 10 million model. I have 10 million models that do like one thing.
They don't identify any existing models. I don't think that they do currently right now, if I remember correctly. Like there's none that actually fall into this. But yeah, to your point, Max, you could string together a bunch of little micro models and do far more damage, right now as it is. It just makes me think of like, nope, you can't use this hammer. You have to use one that's smaller. Yeah. Now, did you go and build your house or kill someone?
And it's funny, like I read this other article that was basically talking about, there's probably a term for it that I'm not aware of yet, but these AI models is going out, learning on the web. People are using it to like post more stuff on the web. So it's like this cyclical, like crap storm basically of like bad information just getting like recycled over and over again. Everything would be a lot better if they like found a way to track to kind of like cut down on like information of that, like false information, just like bad data. Like that would benefit everybody across both from normal like web search to like AI scraping. It's like, okay, what are the actual facts? Like if you like, my opinion, like that, I don't want to say it should be illegal, but like there should be stiffer penalties for that sort of thing. Not just like, oh, we'll print a retraction. It's like, on the back page of the website or whatever and be like, oh, sorry, we messed up. It's some things can be fact checked and they should be. And the more that's out there, regardless of whether honestly even search or AI existed, like the worse everybody is, in my opinion. So, this is like the least of the worries right now, based on what they're saying. They should be policing more of like, okay, how are you telling it to act versus like, what is it trained on?
Well, that's the thing. Well, both. I think you need to have transparency over what it's trained on. Because if I do $100 million, model or $999 million model, and I train it only on like, secret recipes of anthrax, is that cool? Right? I think you have no idea what it's been trained on, so you don't have no idea how you're being manipulated, and then there's no tracking for what it does, what people do with it. Right? Like those two pieces are the most important, not necessarily what the model does.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't need to be trained on like a specific, let me know if I'm wrong, but like ideally, it's like, it doesn't have to be trained on like the actual recipe, or ingredients. Like you train it on how to do things, with examples and like rules, and then like it can piece things together. And sometimes it's wrong. But like a food recipe is a good example. It's like, hey, I got these ingredients. What do you think I should do? Sometimes it comes out great. Sometimes it doesn't, but like it does a pretty good job of putting it all together into a dish that like maybe it didn't exist or you've never tried before. It's not just like running a search and returning grandma's blog to you. Like, oh, here's like a meatball and spaghetti recipe. It's like coming up with something that's potentially new, pieces of different ones. So Like it's the whole point of it, to come up with something that's, an amalgamation of like all these different sources.
It doesn't do a very good job of coming up with novel ideas, but it does do a good job of coming up with new patterns of things. So to your recipe example, like, yeah, you give it a big diverse data set and it can come up with, hey, I've seen salt and pepper put in things together quite a lot versus, like vinegar and butter. I don't know, like something else, right? And then it can like start to, that's how it created, the chemical compounds, right? See
Exactly.
that, these different things, and can like create new compounds of it. It's coming up with brand new novel ideas that it has trouble with, like new concepts, right? Like it's not going to come up with Newtonian physics by itself.
Right.
It has no comprehension of where that even starts.
But it can brainstorm, like it can like throw ideas out there. You just have to know, somebody has to know that it's wrong. Like kind of like Max was saying in the beginning, it's like, it could give you something that's totally wrong, but if you know enough, you're like basically correcting it, until it gets to a good spot. But what it might come up with is something the user might not have thought of or even heard of before. Mm-hmm. So just because it's not coming up with like novel things for itself, it could be novel for the user, something that's they're learning about because of that, or just unique ways of solving things.
This reminds me a little bit of something we looked at in the podcast a few weeks ago, in that conversation that the Perplexity CEO was having with Lex Fridman, and they were discussing whether the models we have right now are very generalist. They not only learn about reasoning, but they also learn a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. That potentially all of that knowledge is not really needed inside of the model, right? Like what's important about it is the reasoning capabilities. So if we have extract all the information, you don't need grandma's recipe anymore. You just need the model to understand how different compounds work together, how your taste bud will react to a combination of hot and cold and whatnot. So that may, again, going back, like make a really small model in terms of tokens or the amount of symbols it can manage, but so much more powerful, right? Like, how do you measure that? It's going to be a small thing, super powerful in reasoning, and as long as it can get to the information, which we know that's the easy part, searching is solved, it's going to be able to do anything, right? It's going to be able to provide it, just kind of going back to your comment before, Brad, about the TaskRabbit, I don't know how to create a bomb, but if you get me, the important bits about it, you will need to find me which ingredients are like reacty. You will need to find me, it can guide you through that. It can guide you through like whatever you want without being trained on that specifically. So I don't feel like it's like, okay, we're going to, you have to show me what data you're going to train on it. And that's what we're going to supervise.
Yeah.
That doesn't tell a full story.
Yeah. I was thinking it would be a decent test to do, but like if you went on to Google and were searching, go back to food recipes for a minute, but said, I want a not spicy dip, like chip dip or something, right? Like Google's like probably looking for things that somebody's saying it's not spicy, and likely will come up with things that actually are spicy too, because it's how I was running the search. But like if AI, you're asking that question, like I have much more confidence in that it will come back with ingredients that are not spicy. And then if you asked it to like, okay, I like that, and I make it spicy, it can like adjust itself. And like that flow for somebody is like vastly improved over like where we're at with other things. But, so I don't know, it's like an obedient, semi-creative thing.
Well, and that's the thing is like, to your point, Max, for like the post-training piece, I actually just looked up on here what the post-training requirements are, because this is a big thing. Like you give me, a few small models, like one that's absolutely great at synthesizing like GPT-4 before it was, lobotomized, right? Just, it can make new compounds. Then you give me one small 8 billion parameter model that can just make a phone call to one of these chemical labs that will, you can order them online. And then, a little small model to do. So, there's things that you can do with smaller models in the post-training that can be done today. And this is where it's like, okay, now we have to developers must implement a written and separate safety and security protocol that specifies protections and procedures to prevent unreasonable risk of critical harm. Okay. So if somebody builds a workflow that does these things, do you have to have some sort of thing in place to prevent them from putting Lego pieces together, right? At what point is it the model? Is it how they put it together? Third-party audits, we already talked about that. You have to have the annual compliance statement, incident reporting. I mean, I want to say, what is defined as critical harm? Because that's another thing. It's like, is it just, it went and said something it shouldn't, or did it actually cause? Okay, mass casualties from weapons. Okay, I can get behind that. That's critical harm. Cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. So mass casualties of at least 500 million or at least $500 million of damage. Once again, keep it under 499. You're good.
What is that number? Okay, as long as you don't do enough harm, you're okay.
This is the idiocy of like some of these things. Like for instance, in California, they passed a bill that said you can't be, arrested if you steal under a certain amount. What did that do? It made everyone just go in there and steal exactly up to that amount. And that's where you have all these like raids on Walgreens and stuff happening. AI model mass casualties, or at least 500, resulting in that acts with limited human oversight, intervention, or supervision. Limited is something I'd be like, okay, what's that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And results in death, great bodily injury, property damages, or property loss, and would, if committed by a human, constitute a crime. So here's a question. Isn't it like if you... No, I forget what it is. What are some things that an AI could do that would constitute a crime, that wouldn't necessarily be considered a crime?
I would or would not.
I don't know. I'm just really worried that these things are going to be used to then start being like, oh, well, that caused me great harm because it spat off some language that someone didn't like, right? Like some people would say that's great harm.
Yeah, defamation, for example, or plagiarizing some content without human interaction.
Well, there's already laws against plagiarism, which I agree with. But I think there's no law against me just eviscerating you.
Yes. I have a next question after we're through with this, but just having a little bit of hard time understanding fully kind of how this gets applied. So maybe if you have some examples of other type of bills similar to this one. So I don't know if I can relate this to GDPR or relate it to something like other type of bills that have control software in a way.
So it looks like how they're going to roll it out is... Keeps going out of the bottom. Many provisions, including the requirements. So January 1st, 2026. So we have next year to get our stuff in order. The government is responsible for issuing... Well, yeah, I mean, basically we have next year. So the government operation is January 1st. Take effect. The board is independent. How is the board appointed?
Yeah, Max, like, I'm trying to think of like another example of like something that I'm aware of, that could be like this widespread across like, millions of developers, if not, it's like, I don't know how you control all that. It's like one thing to try to control a monopoly. It's another thing to like control like telecom, internet type businesses like Comcast or whatever from like false advertising their download speeds or like having to provide minimums, things like that. And they even have trouble like managing that. This is like so much more. Like it could be anybody potentially.
Well, it says it.
So many people aren't even going to know about this.
Well, and they do specify, which I think is good. So they have 5 appointments by the governor. So an open source community member. That'll be interesting to see how that gets appointed. Like there's no like leader of open source, for instance. AI industry member. That's going to be a corporate crony that gets put in there. I'm sure Sam's vying for that spot. Expert in weapons. All right. AI safety expert. Okay. Cybersecurity expert. Okay. And then the speaker, the assembly appoints 2 people from the academic, and then the Senate appoints 2 people that gave to their campaign, apparently. Whoever they want.
It says they shouldn't have any financial interest.
Where does it say that?
Yeah.
Right there on under criteria, the third bullet point. Basically,
Well, how are you going to have an AI industry member that doesn't have a financial stake in the game? Like, that's they're going to have stock in something. And what constitute financial incentive? Because if I have stock in, let's say, Microsoft, are they an AI company or are they just a regular software company? Is there? I mean, that's a big one. Obviously, but like,
yeah, that was another article I read about. Was it Palantir, right? And Microsoft are going to be doing like the U.S. government's AI. And I was like, wait a minute. Here's this bill over here. Microsoft is like, has a stake in OpenAI. Like, this seems like a big conflict of interest just in itself, and we'll probably have somebody on the board. But I just don't see how they're going to police this. I mean, there's things they might not even know about. I mean, they won't even know that it's like happening is the thing.
Well, that's the dangerous part. Because then you follow this line of thought, right? And you're going to end up in these questions. How are we going to control this? How are we going to ensure everybody does it? And you end up in a place where you have to put restrictions, right? You need to build on this platform. You need to build with this language. Your model has to be one of these ones, Kind of reminds me like the protocol we were talking about last time, where they had like a protocol to do attributions. Imagine
story
now
protocol?
you have story protocol. So now I think they mentioned something here, Caltech or somebody about creating a technology to create models. So, yeah, I don't know, like seeing them create a specification where you can only create models with this specific language, right? You can only create new models under these restrictions. So we have the control, so we can implement the shutdown, global shutdown, so we can have all the information about post-training. Just feels like a lot of restrictions. Or
it's
else
like a police state.
Yeah, and like I'm not American, so I don't follow this too much, but it feels like against free speech in a way. Because I'm not being able to create my own model here and like come up with my new original ideas on how to use AI now.
There are some things that are still illegal, to do, to like even to like have like different like even having like ingredients lists or like recipes how to make like illegal drugs, or things like weapons of whatever sort. There's certain things that are illegal to spread as far as I know, but like
you can go and Google how to make meth right now online. Like that's the argument against it, is like you can actually Google how to make like these chemical weapons like anthrax. You can Google how to do these. Like, what's the difference? Because it's telling you. And at the end of the day, when it's something like that, like you just can't like just go and do it because someone told you how to do it. There's some like foundational knowledge. Like you just can't like, oh, okay, now I have the blueprints to build a nuclear bomb. I'm gonna go in my garage and I'll see you next weekend, honey.
I'm gonna double check it, because like if they show any sort of intent for somebody and then they find this as like in their possession, then like it's different.
That's a different charge. That's that's intent. That's like, if you get pulled over with rope in your car, that's not there. But if you get pulled over with rope there, you've posted, I'm going to kill my wife. That's intent, right? That rope now becomes a conspiracy to it. So that it's how you're going to use the tool.
But I mean, this, I know we're going to oversimplify this statement here, but whatever rules they have around like, okay, like don't harm humans, like these like core principles that are there, like if it's, again, very going to oversimplify this. If it's as easy as for somebody to just accidentally delete those lines and push that code up, like that's a huge problem. Or just change something to a negative. It's like, the AI doesn't know the difference. It's following the rules. Like it's that simple, So like without giving him access to the code or the Git history or whatever it is to know exactly at that point in time what was somebody doing, and that's only for the controlled ones. You know, so I don't know. It's not going to happen. And they can't even get people to stop using certain browsers. Like, can't hear you, Brad.
I was saying that, we have to make these decisions, because this is a global technology, and we have to make these decisions about what those are, who controls, who says what they are. And we can't even make those decisions with inside our own countries, let alone between countries. And I think that, you're right, it's going to end up one day, we're going to end up having a scene where some AI engineer is going to end up doing something, and it's going to be like,
I must have put a decimal point in the wrong place or something. Shit, I always do that. I always mess up some mundane detail. Oh! Well, this is not a mundane detail, Michael! Hey.
So I have a feeling that sort of conversation is going to happen with
I forgot the exclamation point.
Yeah. Totally. Like, just imagine today, like, they go into ChatGPT and just remove that little piece that says "do not reply to these type of things."
Yeah, I mean,
just that easy.
Yeah. So that brings us to our next thing, which happened last week, actually, but still is a story that's ongoing. And this is when, so a few weeks ago, the CEO of Telegram, Pavel Durov, he is now facing charges from everything from sex trafficking to, pretty much, let's see, just they try to throw the book at him. But one of the things that was interesting that I saw on this was France used kind of like an older law that's been in since 2004. But basically, and what's really scary about this law is that it could also affect like all encryption. So apps like WhatsApp, Signal, even Apple's iMessage. But one of the things that, let me see where it was in here.
This is so funny because like they also want it to be encrypted. It must be encrypted for safety. Don't encrypt it.
Yeah, no, it's crazy because this law basically requires company to provide the encryption keys if authorities request them.
That's the piece that's on here. Like a company has to both give the government, a description of the technical characteristics as well as the source code of the software, meaning the keys. So I don't want France in your stuff, right? Or what if, you create this as a peer-to-peer where it's not a centralized, right? Because all of these are centralized places that offer an encryption service, but the most secure is actually, peer-to-peer encryption. I'm sending you a message, Adam, and it's encrypted on both of ours, and there's no centralized authority. So does that mean that those tools will no longer be able to work? Are they going to go after those tools? Who do they go after?
Let's see. They mentioned like WhatsApp in here too.
Yeah.
There was something pretty weird about Telegram in particular here, because WhatsApp does have end-to-end encryption, but Telegram doesn't actually. Telegram does like a client-to-server encryption, so it encrypts in your phone, sends it to the server. The way they allow or kind of get to a more complex encryption is because they bounce between servers. They have like many servers across the world. So there's like a encrypted with one server and not with the other one, which is interesting.
So you're saying that even though it says, oh, your stuff's all encrypted, it's not encrypted at the cloud. Is that what you're saying?
It's something.
Why would anyone use Telegram?
No, it is encrypted. It's not end-to-end encrypted, which is kind of hard to put hard for me at least to define it very well. I can pull up for the next time a little diagram that I saw the other day, but it basically encrypts on your phone, sends it to the server. So that's your client to server encryption. But then from the server to server, that's not encrypted anymore. And then from the server to your phone, if I'm sending you the message, it's encrypted again. But it's not that you and I share a key. In WhatsApp, you and I, in our conversation, we share a key that only you and I know of, in a way. It's end-to-end encrypted. In Telegram, it's more like I'm encrypted to Telegram servers and you are encrypted to Telegram servers.
Got it. End-to-end encryption is available on Telegram's secret chats, but not for group chats and cloud chats. Messages are encrypted between the client and the server, but are not end-to-end encrypted. This means that messages can be decrypted by Telegram servers, and that's the charges that they're charging them with. Is like, hey, you have the ability to get in there. We have, information on these criminals. Why aren't you giving it? So therefore, you're a conspiracy on it. And WhatsApp uses the Signal protocol, which I'm assuming Signal uses the Signal protocol, and end encryption for all chats and calls. That only the sender and the recipient can read the contents of the messages.
And like Telegram, I think one of the, in fact, check me on this, but one of the ideas he was saying, like, it's not on this server. Like, we don't know. It's not in the French server. You don't have jurisdiction over this one because it's not here. It's like a big network of multiple servers you cannot access to.
Interesting. Can he prove that it never went through any servers? I mean, this is like a legal nightmare. Outside of the legal side of it, do you think they should do end-to-end? Does he say why they don't?
I don't know if they say why they... Yeah, I don't see they see why they don't do it. I'm sure it's probably something around just because it's only their group chats and cloud chats. I'm sure it's probably from... one, I think they have an actual website that you can go and view your chats, which, well, no, you could do that with end-to-end encrypted for Signal too. I don't know why they don't. That might be the solution. Is be like, all right, fine. We're no longer doing. Maybe they start using the Signal protocol as well.
Well, I think it was related to just simplicity of the architecture, allowing them to scale. Performance was always something very important for Telegram, and the ability to continue pumping out features. I think like they have some features that can only be implemented if they're able to decrypt the data on the server. Contrary to WhatsApp, which is like only on the app. For example, when you go to WhatsApp and add a new device, you have to go through reading the QR code and assume that's sharing the key in some way. With Telegram, I think you just like log in.
I think. Well, I'm not going to be using. I never used really Telegram anyway.
I use it like it does a really good job of translations for things pretty well. So if you're in a group chat and somebody's speaking whatever language, like you can set it up. You can like either click on one, or if you have like the paid account, it'll like automatically translate it. But I've had people invite me to Signal, WhatsApp, Discord. I'm just like, dude, I can't keep track of this. Like, so I just don't send private information on things. It's like, read it if you want, because there's nothing meaningful, or I just don't respond at all.
Yeah,
that's your MO is to just not respond. You just don't respond at all.
Yeah. It's never a good time to respond.
Want to talk to me? Come to my house, knock on my door. I'm gonna tell you all my secrets if you're here.
But not outside, only inside. Turn the AI model mic off.
And away from the phones.
Away from the phones.
Well, that kind of goes into our next one, which kind of going right down the privacy and kind of law, which is around, in one of our previous episodes, we had a debate on whether or not your phone was listening to you, or according to the New York Post, your phone is listening to you, and that some marketing firm put the Cox Media Group admitted in a pitch deck to investors that its active listening software uses artificial intelligence to capture real-time intent data by listening to our conversations. That means that they're essentially admitting it. However, under seeing this, Google removed the Cox Media Group from its partners program immediately after it was contacted by the 404 Media, the group that was investigating this. So they're like, oh, take them off. And then Meta, and then it said, "Oh, all advertisers must comply with applicable laws and regulations." I'm pretty sure that that's what Meta said around the crowd, not the CrowdStrike, but the was it CrowdStrike? I think it was CrowdStrike. I'm getting my hacks mixed up. But then Meta also, it was admitted that it was reviewing the Cox Media Group to see whether it violated any of its terms of service. And Meta says, no, it does not use your phone's microphone for ads. And we've been public about this for years. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's the Cox Media Group trying to oversell what their capabilities are, or do you think that it actually is? They're
Let me grab my tinfoil hat for a sec. They're listening all the time. They're everywhere.
Oh yeah. I had an example. I can't remember if I actually sent it to you guys about it listening, because it was totally random, and this was before I found this article or read it a couple days ago. But I was like, it's definitely listening. I showed it to Diana. But I think there's a lot of legalese fine print in there of like, at one point on your phone, you said that this app can like listen or something like that. And that was enough, even if it's only when the app is open or whatever, that's enough for it to then get that data, probably selling that data or something, and it's coming all the way back around to Facebook, all in a matter of like 20 milliseconds or something ridiculous, right? So like, if there's going to be a law around this, it needs to be like somehow flagged, like maybe this exists, like where did this data come from? Like how did they get it? Was it from active listening? Was it from here? And then it can be like kind of like struck from the record, similar to like, the GDPR and CCPA and whatever else stuff. It's like if I can go and ask somebody to like take me off of all their lists, like I should be able to ask them to specifically remove certain types of my data, and where they got it from, all the way. What's that chain all the way back to the app? Because that's Facebook's gonna be like, we don't know. They send us we sell ads. We don't know. We get data. We're not listening, but that guy over there is the one that's in the wrong, even though Facebook is obviously benefiting from it and other people.
Well, and that's the thing is with all these companies, they have a certain bit of plausible deniability. Just like, because all of these terms of service, like you go to the grocery store and you put in your phone number to get $10 off your Frosted Flakes, right? That data is definitely getting sold to data brokers who are then going there, and there's giant companies out there. Adam and I have both worked with them, that they just go out there and they basically just connect all the dots between what you're doing. Like it's no individual one. They're just connecting the different dots. But I think what you bring up though is a point, which is, what we were talking about earlier, is that it's not necessarily like what is done. It's like, how did you get the data? Whether it's training an AI model, whether it's advertising to me, how did you get this information? Like, it's almost like there needs to be like a little like Google lens on an ad. Like, how was I like targeted for this? Because if it's like, hey, you did this in here, you searched for this and you did that, I'd be like, yeah, you're right, I did. But if it's like, oh, I heard you talking to, your friend on the couch. Okay, what app was that? And let me turn that microphone off real quick.
You can find that information. I think Google does provide some of that, and maybe Facebook too. I think that was by law, but it does not get into the depth of like where it came from. And if I clear it out, what's to say it's not going to be like right back tomorrow? It's like there's the ability to do like don't personalize my ads sort of thing, but like it's still so vague. It's more about the collection of it than it is, or me having total insight into like that whole world. I mean,
yeah.
So,
and I don't think it's like Meta and Google. I think it's these little apps like the, what Game of Thrones character am I that you downloaded once, you gave it all your permissions to your phone, and then that's selling it to some data broker, right? I don't think it's actually Meta and Google because they have no need. Honestly, they know more about you than you do.
What was it you said? Plausible deniability, something like that?
Yeah.
Of course, I remember back, it was 2000s or so, we were building Facebook apps. And you could very quickly spin up like a model, give me access, connect your Facebook account. And from there, you could go on and hit their Facebook API, get a list of your friends, all their information, all their photos, all your posts, all your likes, like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the app only did like stupid quiz. So the data is out there, for sure. And we've talked about these before, is this correlation or causation, right? Like Is it really pulling that data and giving you these responses or accurate ads because of listening? Or is it just like this big data AI that can create this digital identity from you? I think we're not aware of like how big those models are. I always like to say this too, consumer apps, consumer software is like the tip of the real like technology advancements we have, right? Don't quote me on this, but we are using ChatGPT. Probably the NSA is like ChatGPT version 1000, and they can very quickly pull up all your data in like that, and they have a model that can recreate you in one go. I'm trying to scare people off.
Sounds like a cybersecurity violation. How much is the CIA worth?
Well, do you guys remember Google? Like, there's that Google worker. It was before ChatGPT came out. He's like, "Oh, I think this chatbot's sentient." And we're like, "Ha ha ha!" And then like a few months later, ChatGPT came out, and we're like, "Holy crap!" Like, we thought it was like, okay, maybe you're right. They have things that are far beyond our comprehension at those companies of what they can do. And two, when you're talking about narrow focused AI, which is what this is, because at the end of the day, it's narrow focus, right? I want you to engage or purchase, or you have a goal, right? You give it a goal and train to optimize for that goal. That's a lot easier than general knowledge, which is like what ChatGPT, ask me anything, I can do anything, right? So when you're talking about that narrow AI of like task generated, like I can imagine there being like some very, very sophisticated big data algorithms that are doing it. That honestly, and I still believe that just of how much I've used, I know it's a lot different, but we both know that when you put tons of data in there, it creates more noise than it does specific things.
Yeah, but it can also
unstructured.
help to break it down, categorize it. It just takes, it just takes a little patience at first, but like, you just have to be able to like not try to get it all in one shot, and you have time. This isn't like you're trying to, for some of these things, you're not trying to constantly give them an ad right away for it. I mean, it's already crazy fast, but you learn pretty quickly as a developer, like how to ask the right questions, hopefully, how to phrase it to say please and thank you so it doesn't get upset, those sort of things. But
I mean, yeah, there's a lot that people are working on. There's 182,000 people that work at Google and 67,000 people that work at Facebook, and they're not working on the UI, I'll tell you that.
No, they're not. Their main business is ads, targeting. Yeah. It doesn't take a lot. You just go create an ad on Facebook and see what you can do with audiences. See how like far you can go, and like finite to like the grain of, give me somebody that wakes up at 5 a.m., looks at the mirror before doing this, and like you can do that type of targeting. So it makes sense that they're able to pull that data from you, which I would be great with. Personally, I'm like, I want AI to be my sidekick, so I know it needs to know everything. If I really want this like sentient way of like interacting with me, I'm fine with that. But I would like to see the transparency. Give me a dashboard where I can see everything. And I think that would be super interesting, probably a little bit revealing about myself. What's my digital presence like?
And who owns that? Who's private? Like I agree, you have to have all this, but I don't want it to be stored in some third-party cloud provider.
And sold. Let me make my own money from that. You want my data? You want to build profiles from me? Okay, let's put a price on it. Let's do attribution for my information, because it's helping you sell better. So why don't I get a part of that?
Yeah, these trillion-dollar companies have built it off your data. Both of them have free products. Have you ever paid for anything from Facebook or Google? Unless you're an ad buyer.
I have bought something from the ads.
So well, yeah, exactly. They work too, and that's the other thing. So then maybe go ahead, Adam.
I was gonna say, like I said this a couple podcasts ago, but I just wish that once I bought it, it would stop showing me the ads. Like
yeah, you
convert it. Show me the next thing. Like I already bought that. Yes,
you have the conversion metric in your analytics. I mean, most people have that set up.
Most people forget to set that up. but
as we know,
yeah, it's like I bought the car. Now maybe you should try to sell me new windshield wipers or like windshield wiper fluid or something that I could use in it. Don't try to keep on selling me the car.
No, they have to fake it. Like I don't know your credit bank statements. I don't know what you purchase. I don't read into.
Well, then Well, the incentive to also get you, I mean, they do have an incentive to give you a good relevant ad for you to click on it because that's where they get their money. But at the end of the day, too, like, they don't really care as long as the people are spending more on ad dollars if they're feeling they're getting value out of it. So that brings us
that's true, actually. No, it's just you left me with a thought there, because why they keep showing you that ad? I know it works with you. I can show it to you. I'm gonna get the impression anyway. I'm gonna get the attention anyway, so I can charge whoever bought the ad.
Yeah, if you're doing on impressions and stuff like that, because it's part of the target market.
Exactly.
So I think it's a great idea to develop your own dashboard to be able to see what your what content and what data is out there for you. So if you wanted to do that, you might want to use something that Vercel has, which is VO. So I started playing around with this a little bit to just kind of see. I had heard about it. I had been reached out to about a year ago to talk to when they were first beta testing this, or like kind of getting this in the very, very like infancy phases. But I was playing around with it. It's pretty cool. So it's the way that it works. Have either of you played around with this yet?
Yep.
Yeah, since like it first became available, but they recently have chat based now, which is their new feature.
To analyze their data and what data a company has on a person. I don't know. But you can essentially just put in here and just describe your UI. And this is something that, there's other startups, there's other things that are doing this, like, hey, prompt to web, right? Well, there's a couple things that I really like about this. And that is one, it allows you to kind of storyboard out your different pieces. So for instance, here, I don't know if you see this, but it's actually, it's starting to fill these out. It's analyzing, it's putting it there. But it's starting to build these dashboards, and these dashboards are really, really good, or these UIs are really good. So as you can see here, it's created, it even gave it like data usage, the different data categories, browser usage, purchase history, other data, Facebook, Amazon, Google, view data. So it's kind of giving me this, it's even like making some decisions on what I should have in there. And it has different areas. So it gave me 3 different options. So my data, company data, settings, and allows me to, start to iterate off of this. Now I can either create a new generation, or what I would typically do is now take this and go in with the code piece. And this was something that I thought was interesting, because you can actually add this full component, which pretty large component. You can then, when you publish this, you can just use npm add and then this ID, and it will add this as a component to your actual project. So you can actually use AI to create your component library. It's based off of a component library that they have. Like, we need another component library in our ecosystems. That's called, what's the name of it?
That's CDN UI.
Shad. Yeah, Shad.
That's the name of the guy, actually.
Oh, really?
CDN?
That's CDN.
It's no CDN, it's just Shad CN.
Go, bro.
Shad CN, Giga Shad. But basically, like, for instance, here we have mail. So an entire, dashboard for how, if you wanted to create a mail app, or a dashboard app, or cards, or tasks, or name your different piece. So these are all the basic components that are part of this. So you can use these, and you can actually see this in the when it outputs the dashboard. In the code, you can see, hey, at components UI button. So it's using this out of the box. So I thought this was really cool, because you can literally have, your UX designer, chatting with this, and it can give you real usable code that you can then just say, hey, use this package and install it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on where this brings, like, kind of UI development?
Yeah, you mentioned designers. I think it's really interesting the impact that this can have on, like, the design development. collaboration, because right here you're kind of going off from a prompt, but you could also be going from like a screenshot of the Figma, right?
Mhm.
So the designer could be working and coming out with these super creative things, and then you can just bring the design in here and get that dev component created like pretty quickly, which is amazing because sometimes as devs we miss on the little details, on the styles and stuff, but this definitely does not. So I think that, I'm always thinking of how can this improve our communication better, not replace ourselves. So I feel like this is a way for developers and designers to collaborate much more closer and even iterate once they're like in this world using V0.
Have you tried? What does the node modules look like for that once you've imported it?
Oh, like import this into a project, like using the npx vo.
Yeah. I want to see like what actually is delivered in that, and like especially let's say you had two of these in the same project. How does it handle that? They can like one of the initial questions I guess I have is like, is it bloated? What's being added? How well does it work when there's multiple of them? Can you read?
I've noticed it's
them?
Definitely not as bloated as Material UI. I'll tell you that.
It's not, because basically ShadCDN is built on top of Tailwind CSS, so everything is just like straight out React with class names.
Yeah.
He just creates the components using that, and of course customizing the Tailwind theme. So when you actually export that, if you look at the code Brad had on screen, it was a pretty large component. You didn't see a lot of imports and stuff like that, just the primitives like button, link, and things. And something very cool from ShadCDN, or ShadCN, I don't know how to pronounce, ShadCN UI, is that you're kind of in control of the components. So it's not like a dependency, but actually the components get copied over to your project. So you have access to the code at all times. This is something I actually wanted to bring into our framework some time ago. Kind of feel like we've been close to this.
And so if I have two of these, if I have this, and then I start a new project, I guess, or whatever they call it, and I import both of those, they can share the theme that I have on like my top level repo.
Right. Yeah, you can see here Brad is selecting a theme first. So if you look at those components code, it's much more just like Tailwind components. And they're simple by definition, but they're also like very verbose. So I think if you wanted to do any offer usage, say you identify some of those cars you want to have as component, you have to do that work yourself, at least in the current iteration.
This is interesting because, it's because one of the things that I've started doing with like Cursor in particular was, when you're especially a small team, you don't have UX researchers, you don't have like all these things. It's just more like, how am I going to use this, right? Like you want something to play around with, right? Because like Figma, you're not really using it. One of the things with Cursor that's so nice is that you can just give me another component that kind of looks like this, right? Give me another component that looks like this, edit it this way. And you kind of like work with it. So I think with your point about like communication between designers and developers, I think there's going to be an interesting time where you have like UX designers like putting together a vanilla thing, developers being like, okay, these are the things they can go off and start coding the business logic and the functionality. Well, then the designer can kind of come back through and put the design on it almost. And like the developer and the UX engineer kind of work together. I almost wonder if that might be the way that it kind of works, is that the UX gets done first with the developer and then the actual front end design, like the final design.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. At this time, you could see this as a little bit of a limiting factor as well for a team that does have a designer and a UX and want to have a bit more customized experience, because you are kind of constrained to the standards of what they offer today, right? Like you're not going to be able to pull off a completely new design with a new trending or a new brand with this. You get your colors, you get your borders, you can do a lot of that, but you cannot, similar to other things we've talked about AI, you can do a reversion of what's out there. I don't know if you're going to be able to create something new, right? But But it's definitely like bridging the gap between UX. I feel like we're going to see people pump up new software that looks better out of the box. Anybody will be able to bring their ideas to life and have a good UX and good interactions and good like patterns in there out of the way, But you also have to kind of think about that learning curve. It's going to happen, right? Like we were talking about this when we opened. Great, I can go in there and I can create these beautiful components in like 15 minutes, but I still need to understand that Tailwind code and React code if I want to do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So where does that leave people? Like, how do we balance that at that point? Is that like no longer my job? Now it's off to the senior developer?
Or the business owner, because I mean, like, you don't really need to know like Tailwind to then, if it's already put together, you don't need it to then like say, give me a new component, right? It knows that. It knows Tailwind. You can work with it in that respect. I think even like, I don't know if you saw, you mentioned the chat one, but like this right here, like generate a SaaS, generate an interactive pricing calculator for this. So they're using the canvas anyway. They're using the side by side. So this is actually building it. We can actually see it building as you go. I could literally see like me as a marketer being like, oh, I want to play with this. And I just chat with it. Right. And I just iterate on it. I don't need to know that. But I do think that, and one of the things that AI really sucks at, honestly, is like, give me stuff that's visually appealing. It's not very good at that because it doesn't know like what's visually appealing. So I think that's definitely where humans will still continue to be that and continue to drive that forward. But the other thing is that, answer is like, we just recently launched our docs site, right? Like I created this 3JS animation at the top. We used to, all of our pages would look like this, cards, this, some hero at the top. I would have never paid anyone to do this as a startup. It would have taken me days to probably create this, but I could literally just ask for it. And because it's in this bound box, because the styles are all being done, this allows now me to, just ask for something and to be more creative. So yeah, I think that we're going to have a leveling up of what current apps are out there. And then what we're going to be able to do now is just, I think you're going to have these types of interactive sites. That's what people are going to like ask for.
Yeah.
Let me show you this real quick. A little bit of a meme. So this is what's going to happen.
For those who are not developers and technical, localhost 3000 is basically, well, that's your local version. And it's only going to work on your local version. They don't understand the fact that you can't get to that URL. That's awesome. Show me.
And I feel like that's going to happen for some time at least, until we get some platform that rules it all. And Vercel is trying to be that. And they're going to get to something very, very good, I think. But it's like that. Like we still have a lot of engineering problems that, while some may say like it's over engineering, building a POC, building a prototype, experimenting, that has never been the problem, I think. As developer, get pretty good at it. We can spin up a complete thing in a weekend, but getting into production, that's where it's hard, Yeah. Getting into like 1 million users, being able to work on that, that's the hard part. Or maybe we just make it hard, That's why I think Vercel is like a real winner in the space, because they've always had developer experience first as their vision, and they focus on fixing that over the years. And now with all of that, they're able to get really production ready and like high quality sites because they fix everything else. Because they don't have to worry about like scaling it, getting into production. They can focus on the product now. And this V0, I think it's like not the final, but like one of the last iterations on that.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. What do you guys think is their motivation for having this?
Oh, create more apps on Vercel. I mean, if anyone can create like a quick little like app on Vercel and it's now, one of their domains and increases their usage, that's great for them.
Did it allow you to do like a any sort of like data connections or anything like that? Or is it all just the UI? Because there was a URL, you could actually go like see it, right? Like they were.
No, it's a public npm package that I can install once I've created it. I didn't see
I think
anything in there.
there was an actual URL that was like, I thought, to the component, like what I'm guessing is a page. I'm assuming they're like spinning up, there's something, but they're actually like hosting it. Maybe I just misinterpreted the URL or
Well, I
something.
think you can. Well, no, you can publish it. You can publish the block, yeah, and then that will give a. But then anyone else can. So you can come in here. You can go to publish, confirm, and publish. Publishing this block makes it accessible through a publicly available URL, and others users to fork it. You can unpublish it at any time, but your chat will remain private. So yeah, I mean, assuming that they're just spinning up a Vercel app in the background for this, so it's increased use.
They've done this publish. I think this is one of the first products they released back when they were now. They were not Vercel yet. They were just like the serverless deployment platform for developers. And their most shiny thing was like that button that you could put on your GitHub, like deploy. So I think they have it figured out. I mean, they obviously have a lot of great engineers. And obviously like money is it's part of it, but also just being like state of the art. I think they're onto that. They're trying to keep competitive. They're trying to be pushing the envelope on web technologies and everything around it. They have some great people with them.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'll definitely be playing around that a lot more. And I think in some of our like quick little projects as well. But I think just the nature of what each role is going to be doing, from the product manager to the executive to everything, is going to change. Because I mean, there's so many times when we first started Last Rev, we said, give us your designs. Because that whole like working with an executive, what do you want on your marketing website? What do you want that can be exhausting and draining, right? Like, and if you could just have an AI like work with them on that and say, okay, great. Once you've figured out what you want to do, let me know as the developer or as the designer even. Like you can kind of let them just get those ideas out of their head.
Just one last comment, because that's an interesting idea, but I feel like that's where AI is not there. We have a lot of chatbots to create software when you know what you want, but the problem continues to be that the owner or like the business side doesn't know what they want. Like I can go today and build an app from a prompt, but figure out that prompt. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's never been or that's always been a problem. Even now, it's like, I want to put AI into my business. Great. What do you want to do? I don't know. Okay, you want me to just put a sign that says now with AI? Like,
just put it on the domain, like .ai.
Yeah. Like, all right, done. Like, yeah, that's always going to be a challenge, is getting the business end to. And also, well, one of the things I'm really afraid about this is that, this started even when I was at Google, or not Google, but when we were first doing websites. I remember Google first did like their type ahead, right? And we had search at the company I was working for, and they're like, oh, do it like how they do it on Google. Like, just because you see it has been done, you can do it. And if I could do it like that, I would not be working here. I'd be working at Google, right? So like just the fact that people see it can happen. I think I'm even seeing this now more and more. Like they're expecting it to be a lot quicker, and especially if they can have an AI do it once, they think that, oh, this must be easy for you to do.
This is the part of the danger of something like the Shad UI thing, is like, if somebody goes in, like, oh, I just use this, here's the component, and it's like, the styling's not there, I got to implement that. Oh, we're trying to implement that into the rest of the current framework, the theme doesn't match or whatever. Like there's a lot of like that last 10%, but they're like, well, pretty much here it is. I'm like, yes, it's fast, but like, does it work with the ecosystem it's in well? And how well does it work when it's not part of that ecosystem?
They've created in 30 seconds, but still took you 3 hours to debug.
Right. So.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. So until next week, bye-bye.